All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Child Murders Revisited. This is video number 15. And sorry I haven't done a video in a while, just been extremely busy here. But we're going to get back into it. Now, I spent the first 10, 14 videos going over how I got into the doing these videos in the Atlanta child murders. My connections with Stewart Lakewood, Wayne Williams, and the Atlanta child murders, and the Dipper Dans at Stewart Lakewood. And then my family's connections through geography, through Michael Thieves and Wayne Williams and the Atlanta child murders. So I needed all that video. Kind of boring, I'm sure, but those are like, mileposts that once you've gone through those and you understand what I was talking about with the geography, now what we're going to do is lay evidence on top of that in regards to Michael Thieves in the Atlanta child murders and Wayne Williams. And it's all going to become really clear what all that meant. So I'm going to kind of back up now and kind of start generic on the Wikipedia page of the Atlanta child murders. Now, it just amazes me. I'll find these videos that have like 100,000, a million fucking views on the Atlanta child murders. And all they've really done is just gone back and reread the Wikipedia Atlanta child murders page. Now, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my perspective and fill in the gaps of what I know. Because when you just read the Wikipedia page of the Atlanta child murders, it tells you kind of this kid died, that kid died, this kid died, that kid died, this kid died, that kid died, and then boom, oh, Wayne Williams gets caught near the James Jackson's Bridge. And then the trial, and boom, it's over. What I'm going to do is fill in the gaps, because what we have over the last 40 years is a lot of gap where people don't understand everything that was going on in between. And then they use their imagination and they fill it in with the wrong information. And so what I've done, this is not my opinion. I started off not knowing anything. And because of all the research I've done, all the documents I've looked at, all the videos, news articles I've read and listened to and watched, it starts filling in the details for you. If you go on a chronological basis and go through the documents, it becomes really clear what happened. Wayne Williams killed every single victim in the Atlanta child murders, and possibly more, except maybe Angel Lanier. That was not so clear. But there were other people involved with Wayne Williams, either in his little Gemini crew or in the pornography homosexual ring. Okay? And these connect together through Wayne Williams. All right. So let's get into it. So I'm just going to read it basically verbatim and stop along the way and make my comments. Let's see. That's 4 minutes. Okay. It says the Atlanta child murders of 1979 to 1981, sometimes called the Atlanta child murders, are a series of murders committed in Atlanta, Georgia, between July 1979 and May 1981. Over the 2-year period, at least 28 African American children, adolescents, and adults were killed. Wayne Williams, an Atlanta native who was 23 years old at the time of the last murder, was arrested, tried, and convicted of 2 of the adult murders and sentenced to 2 consecutive terms. Okay, so right off the bat, and it's just minor, but it always just irks me that people get things wrong. So Wayne Williams wasn't 23 years old at the time of the last murder. He was 22. Okay? And matter of fact, was he 22? Let's see. He was born in 58, 1981 minus 1958. Yeah, he was 22 when Nathaniel Cater was killed. Wayne Williams turned 23 on, I think, the 28th of May is his birth date, which makes him a Gemini. Okay. All right. And let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Convicted of 2 of the adult murders and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms. It says police subsequently have attributed a number of the child murders to Wayne Williams, although he has not been charged in any of those cases, and Williams himself maintains his innocence, notwithstanding the fact that the specific style and manner of the killings, which was a chokehold strangulation, ceased after his arrest. And that's absolutely true. Those types of murders where kids were picked up off the street and then found later, dumped in the woods or in the rivers, and died by strangulation or chokehold, all that ended after Wayne Williams' arrest in May of or after Wayne Williams came to the police attention in May of 1981. In March 2019, the Atlanta police, under the order of Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, reopened the case in hopes of new technology which could lead to a conviction for the murders that were never resolved. As of November 2025, and no results have been made public. I guarantee you they have the results, folks. Like I've said, if you spend your lifetime of your career, your, how do you say, elected public official career, kind of coddling the beliefs of your voters and never correcting them with the truth, okay? And they look back and they saw what happened to Maynard Jackson. They saw what happened to Andrew Young, okay, when they insisted it was Wayne Williams. That the safe route is just to coddle them along and say, yeah, okay, well, we're going to find out about that. And you'll see every single mayor since then, it's coddled that belief to pander to the voters, not to the truth, but to protect their own ass, to protect their own salary. Okay? All right. We'll go over here. It says DeKalb County police officers recovered the body of a victim of the Atlanta child murders. And that right there is Patrick Baltazar being pulled out. He was on an embankment near the creek, and right here is the parking lot. And it says location. So they got this part wrong. City of Atlanta, Fulton County, DeKalb County, Cobb County, Douglas County. And they found 2 bodies in Rockdale County. Okay? I believe it was 2 bodies. At least one. Okay? Terry Pugh and I want to say Joseph Bell had washed up on the shore, near the shore in Rockdale County. I'm not exactly sure on that. We'll take a look at it. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at the photos first, and then we'll go back to the wording here. All right. There's Wayne Williams. Okay, so that's it on the photos. Not too many there. Okay, the timeline. 1979. In the middle of 1979, Edward Hope Teddy Smith, 14, and Alfred Q. Evans, 13, disappeared 4 days apart. Their bodies were found on July 28th in a wooded area. Smith, with a .22 caliber gunshot wound to his upper back, they were believed to be the first victims of the putative Atlanta child killer. Now, I'm going to go in this in greater detail, but basically what happened is off Niski Lake Road, a woman was gathering cans. She went down this dead-end dirt road, and down at the end of that, past the chain link fence, she spotted the body of Alfred Q Evans. Okay. She called the police. Police came there. Oh, it's just another kid that's been dumped here. And while the police were there, they started smelling something, the rotting of something. And they went towards the direction of the smell, and closer to the road at the bottom of the embankment, underneath that street light that I showed you last time, but I'm going to go over this again. In the ditch, they found the body of Edward Hope Teddy Smith. Okay. He'd been shot in the back, execution style, by a 22 caliber gunshot. Now, how a 22 caliber gunshot could kill somebody, I don't know. Who knows? 22 caliber is very small, just maybe a little bit bigger than a pellet from a pellet gun, unless it went straight through the heart. But I don't know. Anyway, they wrote those off as gang killings, that maybe one got killed. The stupid story was that they got in a fight at a pot party. The 13-year-old, okay, Alfred Evans, brought Edward Hope Teddy Smith up to Niski Lake Road and executed him. I mean, come on, folks. You're going to have a 13-year-old pointing his gun, walking all miles and miles up Niski Lake Road while an older kid in the middle of the night, okay, and then he's going to execute him, okay? That don't make any fucking sense. And then later, supposedly, the story goes that the friends of Edward Smith killed Alfred Evans, okay, supposedly, beat him to death or whatever, and then dumped the body out near that area. That's the way the story goes. But it's funny because Alfred Evans didn't disappear until many, many days later, like 4 or 5 days later. So that didn't make any fucking sense. And how a 13-year-old could, run a 14-year-old up a road in the middle of the night with a fucking 22, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Anyway, it says on September 4th, the next victim, Milton Harvey, disappeared while on an errand to a bank for his mother. He was riding a bike that was found a week later in a remote area of Atlanta. His body was not recovered until November of that year. So they found his bones over off of, what is that, Red Wine Road? Just the road right off of Red Wine Road down there. And he disappeared while on his bike. Now, I don't know about you, but if a bunch of Klansmen or any abductor, pulled up to me in their van and tried to jump out while I'm on my bike, I'm haul-assing on my bike, not on the road, but cross country. So I very much doubt that anybody jumped out of their vans and kidnapped Milton Harvey. It was someone he knew, someone he stopped, someone he trusted, okay? Because if not, you're going to take off, on your bike. But that was Milton Harvey. And we're going to go over these in much greater detail. It says on October 21st, 9-year-old, and also on October 21st was exactly the same day that Michael Thieves was convicted by jury for murder of Jap Hanna, Jimmy Mays, and Roger Underhill. The exact same day, the conviction came back, and he was sentenced a couple of days later. But the exact same day that he disappears, later that afternoon, just right down the road from the courthouse, matter of fact, because if you draw a line from where Yusuf Bell's living to the courthouse, it's right across the highway. Okay? But anyway, 9-year-old Yusuf Bell went to a store to buy Bruton snuff for a neighbor, Eula Birdsong, at Reese Grocery on McDaniel Street. A witness said she saw Yusuf near the intersection of McDaniel and Fulton getting into a blue car before he disappeared. His body was found on November 8th in an abandoned E.P. Johnson Elementary school by a young janitor who was looking for a place to urinate. Bell's body was found clothed in brown cut-off shorts he was last seen wearing, though he had a piece of masking tape stuck to them. He had been hit over the head twice, and the cause of death was strangulation. Police did not immediately link the disappearance to the previous killings. Okay, so where the witness saw Yusuf Bell getting into the car was on the way back from the store, because I'm assuming there's a police report of an interview of the owner of Reese's grocery store, but he was on his way back from the grocery store and up at the intersection of McDaniel. Again, this is just right down the road from the courthouse here on the other side of the highway. He was seen getting into a blue car. Now, at this time in October, Wayne Williams had a police-looking blue car with lights and a scanner. Okay? And we're going to get much more into the detail of all this. So if he's gone from the 21st to the 8th, that's 10 days, that's 18 days that he's missing. Now, in 18 days, that's 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, if a body has been sitting in that area where they found it at the school, the body would have been rotted. Okay, there would have been flesh on the bone, but it would have just started to deteriorate, and there would have been a smell about it. When they found the body, there was no smell, which means the body had been placed there within the last 24 hours. Okay, which means he had been killed within the last 24 hours. So the question you have to ask yourself is, that's 10 days from the 21st to the 31st, plus 7 days if you back up 24 hours. So 7 plus 10 is 17 days. Let's just even it out and say 2 weeks. The question you have to ask yourself is, where was Yusuf Bell for 2 weeks? You even hear his mother saying, look, I have a feeling he's still alive. Just let him go. Just let him go. We'll come pick him up no matter where he is. Okay? So Yusuf Bell was alive for 2 weeks, folks. Where was he? Where was he being held at? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Now, what happens here is in December, Wayne Williams' blue Ford Fury, police-looking car with the police lights and the scanner, gets repossessed. Not making his payments, okay? He's behind. So that car gets repossessed. So Wayne doesn't really have a way. He's got his dad's using the other car, this burgundy Ford LTD, but his dad's using that quite a lot. Okay. So Wayne doesn't have access to the car a lot. So there's a lull from October to March. Okay. So on March 4th, 1980, okay, now right around this time, Wayne gets access, I believe on the 3rd or the 1st, the 2nd, or the 3rd of March. Wayne gets access to I think it's a beige Ford LTD, a rental car. And almost immediately, like on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, a kid reports that he's almost kidnapped by an African-American male in a Ford LTD, a beige Ford LTD, no license plate. So Wayne's back on the prowl. He's back on the hunt again, okay? And this is what he's doing. I don't know if he's involved in this using the kids for pornography yet, but he'll get there. I think he was, but I don't think he's translated that into, I'll just use these kids in the pornography from a killing. So we've got On March 4th, 1980, the first female victim, 12-year-old Angel Lanier, disappeared. She left her house around 4 p.m. wearing a denim outfit and was last seen at a friend's house watching television program Sanford and Son. If I remember that correctly, that show came on, about 7 o'clock, right after the news? So that would have been about 7 o'clock. Lanier's body was found 6 days later in a wooded vacant lot along Campbellton Road, near the same, wearing the same clothes in which she had left home. A pair of white underwear that did not belong to her was stuffed in her mouth, and her hands were bound with electrical cord. The cause of death was strangulation. Okay, so this is one I'm not sure about because there's no fibers, there's nothing that connects her to Wayne, except there was a witness that said that he overheard Wayne say he was going to go make love to a sweet young girl. But that's it. That's not much. Nobody saw Angel get into a car. Nobody saw a stranger near the area. All right. So we'll keep going. Just a week later, on March 11th, 1 week after Lanier's disappearance, 11-year-old Jeffrey Mathis disappeared while on an errand for his mother. He was wearing gray jogging pants, brown shoes, and white and green shirt. Months later, a girl said she saw him get into a blue car with a light-skinned man and a dark-skinned man. The body of Jeffrey Mathis was found in a briar-covered patch woodlands 11 months after he had disappeared, by which time it was not possible to identify the cause of death because there was just bones. All right, so let's back up on this one. So this location is just right down the road from where Wayne Williams was living, okay? If you go up Route Abernathy, you're going to run right into where Wayne Williams is living there. So this woman saw this girl, I think it was a classmate of his, saw Jeffrey Mathis get into this car near this silver fire plug, okay? Another man had seen him bang on the glass and waved hello, which is right near the silver fire plug. Now, he went on an errand to the store, which is right around the corner. So it's not like he was just wandering around and came upon this guy. So somehow Wayne was cruising around, ran past the intersection and saw, I don't know how he would have done it, Jeffrey Mathis, and pulled in near the silver fire plug, and Jeffrey Mathis willingly got in. He wasn't kidnapped. He wasn't forced in the car. He willingly got in. Now, my supposition is that Wayne knew all the kids, except maybe Angel Lanier. The kids had all been to his house, the majority of them, because of the fiber evidence, okay? They knew what the deal was. He had groomed them, whether for the music business or the pornography. He was getting him groomed to go into the pornography business or something along those stages. And whether he intentionally went out to pick up Jeffrey Mathis or pick up any kid and killed them, I don't know. But somehow he was able to get Jeffrey Mathis in the car. So if you think about it, Jeffrey Mathis is on an errand for his mother, just like Yusuf Bell. Yusuf Bell is on his way back on an errand for a neighbor. What's going to entice them to get him in the car? Well, hey, don't worry. Hey, I'll drive you over there. No problem. And then we'll drive you back. Matter of fact, I want to talk to your mom about, your singing talent or whatever. That's enough to get a kid in the door. Hey, I got some guys with some producers with the record business, and they want to hear some more from you. That's enough to get them in. But once you get them in the car, you start going down the road, and you pass the house, or they realize you're not going to their house. How do you keep them in the car? Now, with Jeffrey Mathis, you got another person in the car. Okay? So that could solve that problem real quick. But with Yusuf Bell, it's just him. You notice Yusuf Bell had 2 hits on his head, but he was still alive, though. Okay? So somehow they were able to keep him in the car. Look, either I think it's chloroform, or he's got handcuffs, or you pull a gun, pull a knife on a kid, and you're a big older man, they're going to listen to you, right? You're in control, you're driving. That's what I think's going on there. He uses subterfuge to get him in the car, but then again, how do you keep him in the car? And then how do you get him from bolting? Well, I think he's got handcuffs. They found handcuffs in the room. So I think he's using the handcuffs to handcuff him in the car and keep him there. But how do you keep them from panicking and banging on the glass and screaming, help, help, help? That's where I think the chloroform possibly comes in. Okay? But the biggest mystery for me in all this is, how did he know those kids were going to be where they're at when they were? Is it just pure luck? Is he cruising the areas he knows they're in? Because he could drive up and down Overton all damn day, okay, and never get the exact time that Jeffrey Mathis was going to go out that door, right? So it had to be just random circumstance. He's got a list, or he has an idea of where all these kids at. Hey, let's go by here. Let's go by there. Maybe we'll find one of these kids running around outside. And how do you know when they're running around outside that some adult is not going to see you? The parents aren't going to see them getting in the car. So there's something else going on there that I haven't discovered yet. All right. So Jeffrey Mathis, they find him 11 months later. It's just bones. Okay. So we move on to May 18th. 15-year-old Eric Middlebrooks disappeared. He was last seen answering a telephone at home and then leaving in a hurry on his bicycle, taking with him a hammer to repair the bicycle. His body was found the following day next to his bicycle in the rear garage of an Atlanta bar. The bar was located next door to what was the Georgia Department of Offender Rehabilitation. His pockets were turned inside out. His chest and arms had been stab wounds, and the cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. A few weeks before he disappeared, Middlebrooks had testified against 3 juveniles in a robbery case. Now, I've already shown you that the location, and I'm going to show you again, where Eric Middlebrooks is found is just literally blocks away from the 881 Memorial building that the pornography is being filmed in, okay? And the distributed from by Jimmy Jen. It's literally, I think it's like 4 or 5 blocks away, okay? So, and then he gets a phone call also. This is one of the few that I think, besides Joseph Bell, that they are able to arrange for him to show up. Okay? So he answers the phone call. Either Wayne or Nathaniel Cater or someone else has called him and said, hey, Wayne's going to pick you up. But see, this is at night, though. Kind of odd that they would call him at night. It seems like more likely they would call him during the day. But anyway, he's gone. He knows who the person is, and he's going to them. Hey, I can imagine the scenario is something like this. Hey, Eric. Yeah, hey, Wayne wants you to meet him, at the 7-Eleven, and he's going to pick you up there. He's going to pay you like $10-$20 for the singing that you did. Okay? Now that gets him out the door, because if he says, hey, Wayne wants you to take you to his place and do some more recordings, he's going to resist. He's going to say, no, I can't go anywhere. It's like 7, 8 o'clock at night. I think it's like 8, 9 o'clock. He goes out the door. My mom's going to be mad. So that wouldn't work. So it has to be something to getting nearby to give them some money as an incentive or something. Okay. That's what I think is going on there. And then what I think they did is they got him under control, either with the chloroform or gun or knife and handcuffs, took him to 881 Memorial. They did whatever they did there, filmed whatever they filmed, and then Jimmy Jen or whoever's there is like, okay, get rid of him. Get rid of him. Maybe he's screaming, I'm going to tell. You guys are beating me up. Oh, well, dude, you can't say that. And then they had to get rid of him. So I think that's one of the things that's going on there. All right. And then, of course, they made it look like a robbery. They cleaned out his, his pockets and stuff like that. That's to divert attention away. All right. Move on to the next one. So on June 9th, 12-year-old Christopher Richardson was missing on his way to a local pool. He was last seen walking towards the DeKalb County Midway Recreation Center in Midway Park. He was wearing blue shorts, a light blue shirt, and blue tennis shoes. His body was not found until the following January, clothed in unfamiliar swim trunks, along with the body of later victim Earl Terrell. The cause of Richardson's death was not determined. So I believe they found the bones, okay? Again, it's another one of those situations. This is off of Red Wine Road, right around the corner from where Milton Harvey was found, okay? So, yeah. They found him off of Red Wine Road. A guy was, again, walking down the road, looking for cans, walking his dog, whatever, and he smelled something. He went over into the woods, and no, he didn't smell something. He found a bone, okay? They called the police. Police came, and the FBI's there also. The FBI's working the case, even though they're not officially supposed to. But Popcorn tells the story in the Atlanta Monster, and he said, yeah, we went there, we're looking at the bones, and I started smelling something. And I sent a police officer up towards the smell, and that's where they found the body of Earl Terrell. Now, Earl Terrell was the victim that I saw with Wayne Williams, okay? They found an intact body, okay? And this was in January. I'll get into that more in just a second. Christopher Richardson disappeared in June. Earl Terrell disappears in July. But Christopher Richardson's body was just bones. And then the clothing inside the bones, or covering the bones. Earl Terrell's body was still intact. There was deterioration. There was putrefaction, okay, but it hadn't been more than a couple weeks. So the question, when you get to Earl Terrell here, is where was Earl Terrell from July to January? All right, the next one here. It says on June 22nd, 7-year-old Latanya Wilson disappeared from her parents' apartment. According to a witness, she appeared to have been abducted by two men, one of whom was seen climbing into the apartment window and then holding Wilson in his arms as he spoke to another man in the parking lot. On October 18th, Wilson's body was found in a fenced-in area at the end of Verbena Street in Atlanta. By then, the body had skeletalized and no cause of death could be established. Now, let's go over this point by point here. So, according to a witness, and it said she appeared to have been abducted by two men, one was seen climbing into the apartment window. Well, she said he went in and then back out, and then in and then back out. I think it was like 3 times, okay? And then she saw the same man holding the body of Wilson, who came around from the back, through the back door, went past the parents' room and didn't wake them, okay? And then was standing there holding the body. The girl was limped, okay? She was passed out, probably from chlorophyll, and was speaking to a man leaning up against a white station wagon, okay? And later on, the witness identified Wayne Williams as the man holding the child and Nathaniel Cater as the man leaning up against the station wagon. Now, Nathaniel Cater lived in that same complex and lived right upstairs from LaTanya Wilson. Okay. Now, within a week before, there had been a circumstance where a van pulled up and Nathaniel Cater came out and went into the van, and then LaTanya Wilson had come out. Okay. And then LaTanya Wilson went back inside, and Nathaniel Cater went back into her apartment with her parents there. And a maintenance man had heard, like, sounded like slapping, like a child was being spanked, and then crying. So, what I think happened, because if you look here, you see June 9th, okay? And then there's June 22nd. Christopher Richardson's still alive, okay? He's in the back of the van that Wayne brought to visit Nathaniel Cater. What happened is the little girl just happened to see Christopher Richardson in the back of that van with Wayne Williams and Nathaniel Cater. So they had to get rid of her. She was a witness. Even though she's 7 years old, she could still testify that she saw Christopher Richardson tied up in the back of a van and that Wayne Williams and Nathaniel Cater were there. That's what I think happened. That's why I think they risked going into her apartment, okay? Because I think what happened is the mother, once that slapping incident happens, was watching over her for fear of what would happen. That's why they had to go into the apartment. Didn't happen any other times. All right. It says the next day, on June 23rd, 10-year-old Aaron White disappeared after having been seen near a local store getting into a blue Chevrolet with either one or two black men. A female witness says she saw White being led from Tanner's grocery store by a 6-foot tall, 180-pound black male, approximately 30 years old, with a mustache and a goatee. The witness description of the car matched a description of a similar car implicated in earlier Jeffrey Mathis disappearance. At 6 p.m., White was seen at a shopping center. The following day, White's body was found under a bridge. The official cause of death was asphyxiation from a broken neck suffered in a fall. All right, so let's break this down and go over it. So this local grocery store was Tanner's Grocery. And I'm going to go over that and show you that if you go to Tanner's Grocery and look southwest, you're at the back gate of the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, where newly convicted Michael Thieves is in prison right there. Okay? So maybe they went to visit Michael Thieves in prison. Maybe Wayne went to visit Michael Thieves in prison, went by and picked up Nathaniel Cater, or brought him with him, and then they went by and picked up Aaron White. And you see this description right here. It says a 6-foot tall, 180-pound black male, approximately 30 years old, with a mustache and goatee. Well, that's kind of a description of Nathaniel Cater, okay? But Nathaniel Cater didn't weigh 180 pounds. But he definitely had a mustache and a goatee, and he was about 28, 29 years old. So it says, or it could have been another associate of Wayne Williams. And I don't know about this. At 6 p.m., White was seen in a shopping center. Who knows? But it says White's body was found under a bridge. The official cause of death was asphyxiation from a broken neck. So they must have found Aaron White on the 24th, okay? So they got LaTanya Wilson, and I don't know if she was still alive. If there is, so if you back up the dates, it takes a month for skeletonization to occur. So that's September. So she could have been alive from June to September and then been killed and dumped. Oh, another interesting thing about LaTanya Wilson is that Nathaniel Cater was seen in the search for LaTanya Wilson in that same field where she was found, okay? Right after she disappeared. They went and searched that area. They didn't find any bodies, okay? And there's also a rumor that Wayne Williams was there filming the whole thing. But later, they did another search, more extensive of the area, in October and found the body. So I think what happened is she was still alive. They searched there. They realized, hey, this would be a perfect place to dump her body because they've already searched there. And then he went back and he killed her and put the body in that field. That's what I think is going on with that. Let's see how much time I'm working on here. Oh, wow, 41 minutes goes by fast. All right, so Aaron White, he disappears. That night, they take him back to Wayne's house because there's fibers from Wayne's bed and carpet. They did whatever they're going to do to him, okay? And then as they were bringing him back on Moreland, they're at that bridge, the railroad trestle. He breaks. He realizes they're going to kill him, or he heard something, or something spooked him, and he bolted from the car. And then he went up to the bridge, and they're chasing after him, and he either fell off, was pushed off, accidentally fell off, or they accidentally pushed him while they were trying to grab him, and he landed down below on the railroad trestle with his head hitting the railroad trestle and breaking his neck. And he died of asphyxiation because the neck was broke, he couldn't move, and his head was locked forward, and that cut off his breathing. Of course, they probably went down there, made sure he was dead, and then left him. All right, so that's Aaron White, and we'll just keep going here. It says, in July, 2 more children, Anthony Carter and 10-year-old Earl Terrell, were murdered. Now, I can't remember specifically about Anthony Carter, but I believe he was in the backyard. I believe so, with the taxi that came and put mud on the taxi came, the guy called him over from the backyard. He got in the taxi, put mud on his face, and then they took off. And again, my question on all that is, who the hell was the taxi company? And I found some information that they found the taxi driver. They interviewed him. They had him as a suspect for a while, and then they let him go. And, of course, we all know my story about what happened with Earl Terrell. Now, Earl Terrell was at a swimming pool right off of Lakewood there, and literally right across the street from Lakewood, where all the houses owned by Jimmy Ginn and Michael Thieves were all back in Lakewood and Hilltop and Pryor right there. All those properties owned by the Ginn Music and Jimmy Ginn, thus Michael Thieves. He was kicked out of the pool for horseplay. He was last seen either one or two places, either crying, waiting for a bus on the bus stop bench, or he was seen down near Jonesboro Road, either going into or coming out of a convenience store right across from Southview Cemetery. Okay. So regardless, whatever happened there, and I just thought of something new I'd never thought of before. Will Coxon lived right down the road from where he was living and where Earl Terrell was last seen. Could it be that Wayne was either going to Will Coxon's address or coming from Will Coxon's address? Okay. Meeting with him, and either picked up Earl Terrell and took him to Will Coxon's address, which I don't think they had enough time, or I believe more likely he was coming from Will Coxon's address up to Jonesboro Road, possibly going to have a little conference with Michael Thieves. I would love to see the prison log of Michael Thieves, of the visitor log there. And on his way from possibly talking to Will Coxon, ran across Earl Terrell. Okay, because Earl Terrell gets kicked out about 3:30. I go to work about 4 at the Dipper Dans at Lakewood, and about 4:30 or so is when Wayne Williams shows up with Earl Terrell, buys him the ice cream, and as he's leaving, makes the threat to me that he's going to take care of this kid and he's going to come back and take care of me. And they drive off in that white station wagon. Of course, a lot of people complain. They say, look, he didn't have the white station wagon until October of that year. But, all I know, it was a white fucking station wagon. And then he's followed by these undercover policemen. They go in the same direction as him. And then Earl Terrell is found body intact. So this was July. It's end of July. I think it was like the 27th of July, if I remember correctly. Of course, I quit that day, of course. But Earl Terrell is found body intact, flesh on the bone in January, which is impossible. Because if he had killed him in July, it would have been nothing but bones there with Anthony Carter. Okay? Excuse me, with the other kid. I'm sorry. Christopher Richardson. Okay? So, again, they found the bones of Christopher Richardson in January, and he disappeared in June. But a month later, Earl Terrell disappears, but in January, right next or close to Richardson, they find flesh on the bone. It was putrefied. I mean, it was rotting, but it hadn't skeletonized yet. Okay? So, again, that leads to the question, where was Earl Terrell from July of 1980 to January, or at least December? Okay? At least December. Now, they can tell how long a body has been dead. Even if putrefaction sets in, they can tell. Okay? So, I don't know. I think Earl Terrell was still alive, being held someplace. And remember that phone call? Remember the mom got the phone call later that night to the neighbor who happened to be, her sister or cousin or something, or cousin had the same last name, and said, yeah, we got Earl. He's in Alabama. I don't think this guy had anything to do with it. It's just another opportunist. But they definitely had something there, right? Another thing about Earl Terrell is that he and Luby Getter were hanging out, the way the story goes, and near Luby Getter's house, which was close across the street or down the street from a white neighbor that was friends with the Sanders brothers, the Ku Klux Klan Sanders brothers, and he bragged that, yeah, I'm going to strangle that little bastard Luby Getter because he ran his go-kart into my car. Right there. So they knew each other. Okay, Earl Terrell, Luby Getter, they knew each other. And Luby Getter wasn't from there. Luby Getter wasn't from Stewart Lakewood. He wasn't from Lakewood. He lived up in DeKalb County, up off Memorial. Okay? All right, so we got 10 minutes. We'll keep going. We got Clifford Jones, age 13, disappeared on August 20th. He was found dead from strangulation. The body had been was found on August 21st behind a dumpster in the rear of the former Hollywood Plaza Shopping Center. Okay. So again, for the people that I call them the anybody but Wayne crowd. There's Clifford Jones, okay? And supposedly there was this witness. Okay, let me back up a little bit. Clifford Jones was from out of town. And I don't know if they had moved down here or they were visiting. I think they were just visiting his aunt, okay? And it was her birthday. And they decided they were going to bake a cake, but they realized they didn't have any baking ingredients. So they went up to the Big Star grocery up the street, okay? And I don't think, or I don't believe, that the place where he disappeared was the same place where this Hollywood Plaza shopping center. It may be. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, so they're running around inside the grocery store. Somehow he gets away from his aunt and his cousin, who's about his age. And he's gone. He's disappeared. And they find him the next morning, okay, uh, by a dumpster. Now, you'll hear these stories of these witnesses that will say there's this one guy who has two stories. First story is that he and two other guys witnessed a guy by the name of Jamie Brooks who worked at the laundry at the Hollywood Plaza shopping center having sex with Clifford Jones, and Clifford Jones saying, I'm going to tell my mommy, I'm going to tell this, I'm going to tell that. And then they put a rope around his neck and strangled him. Okay. And then they took the body. I guess the way the story had to go is that they took the body and put it in a bag and took it to his house across the street. And then the next morning, they went out and dumped the body behind the dumpster, behind the laundromat where you worked at, right behind where he killed him, right? And so these three witnesses said they were looking through an exhaust fan, okay, that's turning. And when you look at that building in the pictures, you see that exhaust fan, and it's there, but it's like 10 feet off the ground. And there's three of them. So how three people could hover 10 feet off the ground and look at the same time through an exhaust fan, I don't know. Now, the next story, one of the witnesses says is that he was standing in the doorway in front of the laundromat, and he could see all this going on, which is impossible because there's a partition wall between in the back behind which all this activity was going on. So that's impossible also. So this is why, and then also the police investigator that interviewed him said this witness was highly susceptible to suggestion. And you could say, well, was it Clifford Jones? Was it Jamie Brooks or is it Mickey Mouse? Our evidence says it's Mickey Mouse. And he would say, yeah, it was Mickey Mouse. I saw Mickey Mouse kill him. So they discounted this witness's testimony. For some reason, people will come forward and say shit that's not true just to be part of what's going on. Okay? The facts is that nobody saw Clifford Jones being killed in the laundromat. It's impossible. They also said that Jamie Brooks brought him out the next morning in a plastic bag and put him by the dumpster. He wasn't found in a plastic bag. When the police got there, his body was laying right by the dumpster. And again, if you think about it, if you just killed somebody, why would you put their body behind where you work at? That don't make any fucking sense, right? Doesn't make it. You're going to take it over to your house, right? And let it sit there all night. And these three witnesses, two of them went over to the house and spent the night with Jamie Brooks. Okay? They just saw him kill Clifford Jones, but then they're going to spend the night with him, right? With the dead body inside the house. Now, how does that make any fucking sense? Now, later on, this story will be picked up by, God, what was that guy's name? The sheriff, the guy who ran for sheriff, and I'll get into that later. Dorsey, Sidney Dorsey. And again, this is part of that consumption, okay, going along to get elected type stories. That he went along, he signed off on the investigation that it was Wayne Williams and these witnesses were wrong in the police reports. But when he runs for sheriff, he gives news reports and interviews saying, I never believed Wayne Williams was guilty of anything. And that it was Clifford Jones that killed, excuse me, it was Jamie Brooks that killed Clifford Jones. All for consumption to get elected. Anyway, so we'll move on from that. And we got, 5 minutes? So we got Darren Glass. It says age 10 was reported missing on September 14th. His body has never been recovered. Now, the question that people in the fight that people had back at that time is, well, my kid got killed. How come he's not on the list? And what people didn't know, because the police weren't going to tell them, because if you tell the public and the news media, you've told the killer. That what's linking all of the children, okay, are the fibers, specifically the violet acetate fiber, which was the only fiber found on the clothing of Darren Glass. Now, they never found Darren Glass's body, so why is Darren Glass on the list? There were plenty of other kids that got killed. They found bodies. How come they didn't list them? Because they didn't have the violet acetate fibers. Now, they never mentioned the violet acetate fibers until Wayne Williams gets arrested. Okay? And then when Larry Peterson goes in and searches Wayne Williams' house, what does he find but a violet acetate bedspread right there? So that's why you don't release all your evidence, because then the killer will know, because they know the killer's watching the media, okay, because he's reacting to what they're doing. And then as soon as October comes, it leaks that they're finding fibers, and that's how they're linking them to the list, okay, on the body. And so Wayne Williams goes out and reads up on Lecard's exchange principle, and I'll get into that, and starts dumping the bodies in the rivers to wash off the fibers, okay? So that's what's going on with that. Now, Darren Glass has never been found, okay? Only Wayne Williams knows where he put him, okay? So now we've got Charles Stevens, age 12, was reported missing on October 9th. His body was found the next day on Normanberry Drive near the entrance of a trailer park. Stevens' body was missing a T-shirt and one of his shoes, but he's still wearing his dark blue pants. Police determined that his cause of death was asphyxiation. Rub marks were also identified on his nose and mouth. Dog hairs and 2 Caucasian head hairs were found on the body, along with 2 pubic hairs, which did not belong to Stevens or Williams, and which were found on boxes 950 feet away. They considered this pattern case in a Wayne Williams trial. So, again, if you look at where Charles Stevens disappears, I believe it's Pryor Road, right? It's right over there where those houses are owned by Jimmy Ginn. Okay? Jimmy Ginn, if you compared the Caucasian hairs to the Caucasian DNA of Jimmy Ginn, you're probably going to find a fucking match. Okay? Although he's dead now. But it could be somebody else. It could be some other person. Mr. Wilcoxon. Who knows? They should do. This is probably what's in that DNA package, but they never have given us who that belongs to. Because if you find out the DNA sequence, you could link that to someone who's alive today and find out who that belonged to. But they haven't done that yet. So we're going to end here, and we're going to pick this up next video and keep going. And we're going to slowly go over every single thing, and I'm going to put in my comments and put in the evidence that I know, and we're going to keep making this case. All right, so take care, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye-bye.